In sports circles, disputes periodically arise about the need for the effectiveness of the use of muscle failure techniques. Professional athletes, due to their extensive practical experience, solve this issue individually, developing the most suitable training system for themselves. Here beginners often doubt whether it is worth doing physical exercises bringing the body to muscle failure. In this video, we will find out whether it is really necessary to train to fail with each approach. So watch to the end, it will be informative. What is a workout to failure? Muscle failure is a condition in which a person cannot finish a repetition with a given weight and in full amplitude, but occurs as a result of central or peripheral fatigue. With central fatigue, the central nervous system suffers. She gets tired, and as a result, the excitability of motor neurons decreases. Nerve cells send signals to muscles to contract. In the case of peripheral, local fatigue, they get tired muscle fibers. For example, they accumulate products of anaerobic metabolism and interfere with doing their job. So do we need to train to fail? Training for muscle failure benefits and harms. Working out to failure has long been considered the best way to train for muscle growth. The main reason for this is the idea of the so-called mechanical stress, the main factor of muscle growth. To maximize the mechanical stress and growth result in each of the approaches, you need to be able to engage as many muscle fibers as possible during this approach. And the more additional repetitions we do, approaching failure, the more we use motor units and activate the muscle. Given such a positive relationship, it may seem that bringing each approach to failure will increase the total amount of training that you perform. As a result, it will lead to a large increase. It sounds logical. But don't jump to conclusions. In practice, training for muscle failure is difficult and unpleasant. It requires a lot of motivation. In addition, it tires your body very much. Studies have shown that training to failure causes excessive muscle damage and significantly prolongs the recovery period. The subjects needed about 24.48 hours more to fully restore their working capacity when training to failure, compared to training when they stopped the approach for a couple of repetitions before completely giving up. When training for muscle failure, it is very important to recognize at what point this failure occurred. For example, if during the exercise you notice that there is a bias in one direction, then most likely the failure has already occurred. In addition, muscle damage can easily affect subsequent workouts and as a result, will interfere with performance. If this happens for a long time, eventually everything can end up overtraining. As we approach muscle failure, the involvement of motor units and muscle activation increases in the approach. But the study showed that the number of active motor units stops growing for 3 to 5 repetitions before complete failure. What does it mean? Let's say you know that you can do 15 biceps lifts and not one more, respectively. You need to perform only 10 to 12 repetitions of these 15. This will still be enough to maximize the involvement of motor units. But despite the above risks of training to failure, in some cases, they can really be useful. If you are an experienced athlete and want to increase muscle strength, as we have already noted, the muscles receive the necessary stimulus for growth somewhere in 3 to 5 repetitions before failure. Then comes a plateau and more stimulus does not increase hypertrophy. But this primarily concerns those who have just started to swing and are still considered a beginner. In this case, by training to fail, you simply waste energy, tire the nervous system in vain, and increase the risk of injury. What is actually relevant for beginners unfamiliar with the correct technique? But if you are already an experienced athlete, then it makes sense for you to train until your muscles fail. This technique forces the pumped muscle to activate more fibers, due to which the muscles become stronger. Training to fail can bring some benefits, but not to everyone. If you work out at home and want to build muscle with small weights, when you do heavy weights, the body is forced to immediately strain all the muscle fibers to lift a heavy barbell or kettlebell. However, when you work with small weights, some muscle groups are not activated or work very little. And in this case, training to fail is a great way to build muscle mass as fatigue accumulates. The body will have to connect more and more fibers to keep moving. So in the last repetitions before the failure, all muscle fibers will work. They will get the necessary load and will grow as efficiently as if you were working with a lot of weight. If you rarely exercise after intense workouts, your muscles need time to recover. Therefore, training to fail will not suit you if you train a muscle group every other day. The fibers simply won't have time to recover. However, if you exercise once or twice a week, then training to fail can be much more effective. In particular, split workouts will allow you to load the necessary muscles well in a short period of time with this mode. You will have time to recover and benefit from training to failure. How to train properly to fail so as not to harm yourself. Based on the research data that we have to date, it can be argued that leave about 1 to 3 repetitions in reserve during each approach. This is the best way to achieve maximum muscle growth without accumulating excessive fatigue. This is especially important for complex basic exercises because they are more exhausting. And the risk of injury in them as they approach muscle failure becomes a more serious problem. You can turn on approaches to failure during peak load and forget about this training manual for the duration of recovery training to give the body a rest. However, in some cases, doing isolated exercises in a group can help you pump up your muscles faster. But they should be done only if you have been training for a long time and your muscles are prepared for loads. Well recover, include weeks of unloading as needed, and follow the recommendations for training to failure. Perform to failure only simple exercises that do not greatly burden the nervous system. For example, lifting dumbbells on the biceps, triceps extension, shoulder extensions, flexion and extension of the legs, and lifting on socks to pump the calves. Observe the technique of performing the exercise, otherwise, the approach may lead to injury. Alternate workouts to failure with the usual approaches. So you will save the nervous system from overload, and at the same time ensure the inclusion of all muscle fibers. Do you include workouts to the point of failure in your training process? Share your experience in the comments. Like and subscribe to the channel, there will be a lot more useful information.